Hey everybody, it's Randy Shannon back with 42action.org. We're so glad to have everybody on tonight, July 23rd. And this is the week I was supposed to be back in Iowa biking across the state, and the schedule's just been so busy I had to cancel that trip. Super bummed. I don't even know if you guys know that I do that, but they have a bike ride that's pretty famous where in 6 days you go across the state and you sleep in tents, and it's thousands of people. It's super primitive. You're out in all the elements, and by the time you're done, you are pretty burnt or super tan. Just depends on what you prep for. And it's like going to Gold's Gym all day long for 6 days straight, nonstop workout. So it's a super fun event, but this year I just couldn't do it. But I am so glad to be back here tonight with you guys, and we've got Andy Ostrowski, and I hope I don't butcher your name, Andy, and we've got him back. Last week was so good, and we had to cut it short right on the hour of 9 Eastern, and tonight we just want to let him go. And I definitely want you guys to get your questions prepared. And, you know, we'll open Andy up, you know, whenever he wants to or at certain times and let you guys ask questions. I just ask that everybody gets in line, nobody runs over each other, and everybody remains polite to each other. If you've got background noise, please mute out. And think about everybody else that's on the call, dogs, dishes, everything else that you can imagine. Please pick up all that sound. Babies, I heard a kid there. Just remember these calls are all recorded and they get reposted to YouTube, and the replays are available for the next solid week if you just dial back into the replay line. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. We're just under the tag 42action. And without further ado, Andy, do we have you on the call?
Yeah, I'm here.
Awesome.
Hello again.
You know, we had so much positive feedback about you throughout the week. I think
Good.
I heard your name multiple times every day.
Wow.
And,
good.
You know, so you and I had a couple of texts, but on my end, I actually heard your name literally multiple times a day, including today. I know that I'm sending some pretty incredible people your direction, whistleblowers, people that I know are reaching out to you. So hopefully some of those people will be able to get together with you and get some help that they desperately need. So, you know, Title 42s are one of the things that you specialize in. You're running for U.S. House. Is it this year, next year? When are you running?
Well, I ran for House last year, and, you know, I'm not quite prepared to make it official yet, but I'm, you know, going to be running at least for House next year, and probably, well, actually, you know, I mean, what I'm flirting with is the idea of running as an independent for United States Senate here in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So a statewide office at the federal level.
Outstanding. Okay, excellent. And have you checked it? Is there an opening? Who's going to be leaving?
No. There's an incumbent by the name of Pat Toomey, Republican, who holds the seat now. And, you know, I know there, in fact, I was just watching, you know, one of the shows here that said there was a second Democrat is getting in the primary. But, you know, from my perspective, you know, I ran as a Democrat last year for a House seat. And, you know, the two-party system and to play the party politics game is very confining. And, you know, while it does give you access to, you know, a solid 30% of the vote going in, you know, you just can't break free of it and really talk about the issues that need to be talked about. And those issues are, you know, the justice system in this country, access to courts. You know, I'm personally going to be talking about, you know, the Federal Reserve and, you know, the real, you know, the corporate fascist culture that we have, and these real issues that really don't get talked about in the mainstream political process. I mean, they talk around them, and they talk about some of the symptoms of them, but they don't talk about the real issues and the real reforms that need to be made. And, you know, I think, you know, I mean, to me, gaining the seat is, you know, that would be wonderful to be able to call myself, you know, a senator or to serve the people as a senator. But it's more important, you know, that we start shifting the forcing and shifting the discussion and the debate to the real issues that need to be talked about. And I think you can do that. I mean, Pennsylvania is very, very difficult, you know, for a third-party candidate. It's very restrictive laws, and it'll be a real uphill battle, but it's because I've been, working with people like you, and I'm working with people like you back here in Pennsylvania, and people that are suffering through the court systems, and their voices need to be heard. And it's just a grassroots thing. It's an idea that we want to get some discussion on some of these issues, and that's what I want to do. I mean, I just don't want to play the party politics game to have a position of power just so I can be impressed with myself and have power. I want to do things to change the system, and that's what I'm all about here.
Awesome. Okay, the anonymous line that just called in, you've got some background noise. I muted you, and you hung up and came back in. So there's a reason I mute you. You've got background noise. So you just got to figure out what that is. I'm going to mute you again, and I will unmute you in a few. Just anyone who gets muted, it's because we're picking up your feedback. So just make sure you take care of that, and then I'll go back and unmute you. Is there anything in particular that's on your mind that you wanted to talk about tonight?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Hey.
You are our special guest.
You know what? Yeah. There was a couple things that I wanted to talk about, and I didn't come with an agenda to be prepared to talk about them. But one thing that was on my mind is I saw this story about I think her name's Sandra Bland, the woman from Texas, the black woman who was pulled over for a traffic stop and ended up killing herself in prison. And I thought about it in terms of this call tonight specifically, because it's just to give the people out there a real idea of what they're up against. I put something up on my Facebook about that, and I didn't really comment on that specifically because I didn't know enough. But from what I saw, I mean, anytime a traffic stop, a routine traffic stop, turns into an aggressive police encounter where someone's thrown out of their car and thrown to the ground, and then this woman ends up, committing suicide of all things, and that's what the report says. And I was at a meeting, I was just hustling back, and I heard the news in the car, and they said it was officially a suicide. Well, long story short, I had and actually this wasn't my case. This was of my law partner, a fellow by the name of Don Bailey. There was a guy here. This is this is a Title 42 case, which is what I want to talk about it. There was a guy, and I tried to reach out to his family the other day because I was thinking about them in the context of all this. His name was Jeremy Dock, and they had a Justice for Jeremy website at one point. I tried to reach out to them through the website, and the email came back undeliverable. So I don't know what the status of their efforts are, but I want to get in touch with them. But this guy, he was, and I forget what his charge was. I mean, I'm going back, 5 or 6, 7 years now. But he was in a local county prison. And, while he was in prison, they wanted him to do some drug informant work for them. So they let him out and let him out in the street to do a couple things, and came back in prison. And he started, he got labeled as a snitch, and he, some of the information that he had was about these prison guards who were dealing drugs in the prison. And
wow.
He came across an unsolved murder. He found out information about that, but it ended up being a politically sensitive issue. And here he was, a sitting duck in his prison, knowing that he had information about these prison guards and other officials dealing drugs and all kinds of political corruption. And, one day he winds up dead. And, the cause of death was ruled a suicide. And the manner of death was they alleged that this guy tied two ends of his bed sheet to the bars in the prison, and then leaned into, just think about the physics of something like this and how it would happen. He leaned into the bed sheet until he asphyxiated himself and killed himself, which is basically a virtual impossibility to do.
Exactly.
The implication here and the evidence, the inference of all the evidence is that these prison guards killed him. And, so my law partner files a 42 Section 1983 lawsuit alleging that, this is a Fourth Amendment, effectively excessive force kind of, or an Eighth Amendment, cruel and unusual punishment, 14th Amendment. Those are the the amendments that come into play in a situation like that. And he had an expert report. I don't know if anybody out there knows the name Cyril Wecht, who is he's a world-renowned forensic expert who, my former partner knows personally because, they both grew up in the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area. So he has these suspicious circumstances behind the death. There's all kinds of, and autopsies done, and it shows that he was pretty well beaten up. He had, I don't want to, I might not be 100% on the facts, but I believe he had a couple broken ribs. I know he had all kinds of contusions on his body. And then, the opinion was this manner of death is virtually impossible to do. And, the story, though, is that he filed, so Don Bailey files a complaint in federal court. And this federal judge, John E. Jones, and I've got some stories myself about John Jones that, and in fact, I might have even referenced him on my call last week, but, he dismisses this complaint on a Rule 12b-6 motion. So Don Bailey, and you guys have to understand, you people out there who are doing these Section 1942 or Title 42, Section 1983 cases, how the courts are your enemies, and I'm sure you're all finding this thing out. You know that under the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, under Rule 8, it's a notice pleading statute. I mean, this complaint should have been very easy to file. This guy wound up dead. There's evidence that his death was at the hands of these prison guards. The inference is based upon the fact that he was about to, disclose information about drug trafficking in this prison, and that was a motive to kill him. That's really simple. And I think anybody, 99.99% of the people out there on these facts can say, well, yeah, that's a reasonable conclusion. So, under the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure and the notice plea, the way the federal rules were drafted is that they didn't get hung up on the formalities. And somebody, I think it was on your call last week, we talked about the Iqbal and Twombly cases and how they're trying to, engineer those cases into a heightened pleading standard. But that's not the case. I mean, it's supposed to be a notice pleading, bare bones, factual statements, enough to support a claim. And then the bulk of your case is to be developed during the discovery process. The discovery process is taking depositions, serving subpoenas, doing interrogatories, doing document requests, doing requests for admissions, things of that nature. And it should be a very easy hurdle to get over a 12b-6 motion and get to discovery. Well, with all this evidence, and here's what these judges in central Pennsylvania and elsewhere in Pennsylvania do. They micro-analyze and manage your complaint and say, well, you didn't specifically say this, so why don't you amend it to say this, and why don't you amend it to say that, and we're going to throw this case out. So, Don Bailey ends up with a complaint that spells all this out in detail. He files an expert report as part of the case, and this federal judge throws the case out on a Rule 12b-6 motion saying he did not state a claim under Title 42, Section 1983. So, basically, and I believe, and I think anybody who looks at the evidence will believe that, it easily at a jury trial on a case like this, if it ever got that far, a jury would come back and conclude that these police officers or these corrections officers had a hand in this guy's death. And I don't think it's any great stretch for anybody to say that. I think that the factual issues are there as it stands right now. And this case did not even survive a 12b-6 motion. It was thrown out without even getting to discovery. So, that's kind of my lesson for all of you out there who are doing these Title 42, Section 1983 cases of what you're up against. I mean, you're not, it's bad enough to have to sue police officers or government officials and sort through the discovery maze, but you've got the real obstacle to justice in these cases are the federal courts themselves. And don't let anything I say be a reason not to, persist and pursue these cases, but just know that when you're out there and, these judges are giving you these decisions, and whoever the fellow was we talked about the Iqbal and Twombly case last week with, I mean, they're just using these things to deny you access to justice. There's no intellectual merit or substance to these discussions that these judges are having with you. It's just, and you'll find this when you do these cases. You can go in and you can have every I dotted and every T crossed, and have your arguments airtight. But they'll still find something. They'll find a misplaced comma. They'll find something, some way to justify throwing your case out. And it's very frustrating. I've been through it dozens of times myself, and I talked a little bit last week about how, my progression with this went is, I first started wondering, am I doing something wrong? I mean, maybe I'm the one that's at fault here. Not believing that, but that's where you got to start. And then, once you realize, my logic is pretty sound. I understand the law. I know what I'm talking about here. I'm no dummy. I wouldn't take these cases. I mean, from an attorney standpoint, what do these judges think? I want to take a bogus case and not get paid? I'm taking these cases because I believe in the merits of them. And ultimately, also, when you're a lawyer, this is your livelihood. So I wouldn't be taking cases if I didn't think that ultimately, I would prevail and get some compensation out of them. So, you check that aspect of it. And then you start, then you look at the individual judges and, maybe this judge just, had a bad day. Maybe they're relying too much on their law clerks or too busy to check their work. And then, you start to see patterns develop with these individual judges. Then you think, no, they couldn't. This is deliberate. And then you see it in a couple more judges. And then you realize it's an institutional problem that resides in the courts. And, so that's what we're up against. And I believe it specifically relates to these cases where people are arguing for their individual rights. I think it all started in the courts really started to control these cases in the wake of the civil rights movement of the 60s, when a lot of blacks were suing for equal rights under the law. But it's grown and developed to whistleblowers and people who are getting thrown out of their homes, evicted by sheriffs with guns, and any advancement of the rights of the individuals in contrast to the power and authority of the government is where these cases are controlled. And it's much different than your personal injury cases in this country, in this society. Everybody, lawyers are free to go out and put their face on a billboard and sue everybody, for every trip, slip and fall and every auto accident, and, make millions of dollars. And nobody really has a problem with that, because that's all, that's just doing business. That's the insurance industry, and it becomes a cost of doing business. And the lawyers become a cost of doing that business. Even though everybody talks about, tort reform and this, that, and the other thing, I don't think you're ever really going to see any real problems with that. And, in other areas of the law, you have contract disputes, and, sometimes you get fair treatment in those things, although you run into a lot of, provincial attitudes and that kind of, good old boys corruption in those cases of who knows who. But in these Title 42, Section 1983 cases in particular, where you're going into the heart of, government corruption and exposing bad police officers and exposing bad government officials, that's when these courts really put the clamps down on people's access to justice. And, it's a very frustrating experience. I don't know how many people you have on their phone call and how many of them have cases right now, but probably every one of them is nodding their head and knowing exactly what I'm talking about. But again, and that gets to kind of why I decided ultimately, I got to just start running for office and talking about this stuff, because, they don't let lawyers change. This system is incapable of disciplining itself. And, we have tried, time and time again to bring these things to the court's attention from within the courts, and to specifically say in things, do you have the ability to discipline yourself? And they don't. And there's all kinds of reforms that need to be, undertaken in these things, and, we don't need to get into all the policy details of it, but that's what was on my mind, actually, in light of our conversation last week and in light of our conversation this week. I wanted to give you that example of that clear case of this guy who was killed by prison guards that couldn't even get past, Rule 12b6 motion. And the injustice of that is just tragic. His family has been torn up over this for years and years, living every day, knowing that their son, and again, I don't know what he was in jail for. It might have been some kind of drug offense or something, but he was a nice kid, a good-looking guy, he was in his early or mid-20s and had a family that loved him and cared about him. And now what do they have to live with every day of their life? Not just the fact that their son got subjected to the criminal process, but that he was killed by the people in that process. And, the harm and injury that this does to people, it destroys lives for the rest of their lives, and the courts just are so cold and callous about it, and, they're protecting their little interests. This judge happened to have some local connections to the county that it happened in, and it's just tragic, sad, and unfortunate, and that's kind of where I'm at with it. So that's what I had to talk about to you, Andy.
I wanted to throw out there, and I have no idea if there's anything to this or not, and all my listeners should listen to this. I'd be curious what people's feedback is. I don't know if you're aware of false flags and things that happen in our country, and maybe you don't even want to go down that road, because I know when people that are running for office actually comment on some of those things, and that can be harmful in the race. But the story about the woman that you mentioned that was yanked out of the car, and then 3 days later she's dead in a jail cell, and this had to do with a turn signal or something. There's no reason for her to be in there, and it was clear on the footage that she wasn't resisting, and some of the things he was throwing out there. I mean, the guy is a clear liar. And but here's the thing. Somebody texted me tonight, and they said, hey, hurry up, turn on Fox News. And I quick put my TV on, and I missed the story that they were wanting me to see, and I flipped the channel, and on CNN I happened to see the mother of this woman, and she was on CNN, which is typically known for being a liar and falsifying all kinds of things, propaganda, making up footage of fake war scenarios, like the reporters are getting bombed and it's really on a green screen. There's plenty of that evidence out there.
I've seen some of that, okay.
Yeah, okay, so I see the mother on CNN tonight getting interviewed by the Reverend of Hell itself, Al Sharpton, and the mother is smiling. He asks her, the same lame question that I saw with the Sandy Hook stuff, which there's now $1 trillion lawsuit against them for falsifying that whole event. And he says, how are you holding up? And this woman is smiling. Now, if that's my daughter or my son, in my case I have sons, I'm not going to be on CNN 3 days later smiling. I'm going to be, so just insane about the whole thing. I'm going to be tearing my own flesh off, and I don't mean that literally, but I'm just not going to be smiling on CNN. So it instantly raised something in me that this very well could be a false flag. I don't know, and I'm throwing that out there for everybody, but when I see the mother smiling on CNN, I would be, shedding tears. I'd look like a wreck. I'd have the dark circles. I probably wouldn't have even taken a shower in 3 days. I wouldn't have eaten. And she looked healthy as a horse and on there smiling. It's striking me odd. And I know the story is changing as we go, but, they're really trying to fuel a race war. And, wow, you got the frumpy white old guy, and everyone's mad at cops right now, including me, for all the things that are happening. And now you got this frumpy white thug, a gang in a suit, yanking her out over a turn signal, telling her to put out her cigarette. He has no right to tell her to do that. She has the right to smoke her cigarette. She's in her car. And now all of a sudden she's dead. We don't have footage of that. There's 3 minutes of the cop footage that's been removed. A bystander filmed for 9 minutes, and the cop footage released is only 6 minutes. So they've been busted on that now, too. That's coming out. The guy's still on a desk job. There's just all kinds of things that would absolutely enrage the public, absolutely enrage black people, absolutely enrage white people. I don't know. I just got flags about the whole story. And I think everybody should just before we go jumping into it, this may be another lie that's been put out there. I just don't know yet. So just thought I'd throw that out there for people.
And I'm open-minded about all this stuff, and I premised everything I said by saying I just don't know enough about it, But that was the context for me being reminded of this other situation where it actually did happen, where this guy was killed in a prison. So, in terms of just commenting on these false flag things, I think the time has come for people to really start talking about these things and not, the allegations are out there and they're believed by enough people that I think we owe it to ourselves and we owe it to the people to have reasoned discussions about all of them, from the 9/11 conspiracy allegations to, everything else that has come down the pike. And, I don't know how much of this stuff is manufactured. I just say, that stuff about CNN that you said about manufacturing that stuff on the green screen. Just recently I saw something about it, and I'm very conservative in my thinking, and I tend to be a little bit gullible and naive, and I believe what I'm told, and when I see something like that, it's like, wait a second, your first instinct is someone just making that up, or did they make it up? So, I'm just very open-minded and rational, and I think that things need to be talked about. I'm not, ready and willing to jump to conclusions, but, I just gave you a context, Randy, about this kid who was killed in prison. That does happen. But then I also know that things are manufactured and made up too. So, I'm trying to, I would not be, if I firmly believed after studying the evidence that, the hypothesis that you're discussing is true, I'd be the first one to come out and say it. But you just got to be really cautious, because you are, and that's one danger in a lot of this. And you're right, a lot of it is, I find myself thinking that way a lot. Sometimes I don't comment on things, not because of, you don't want to get out ahead of something. And that's not just being a cowardly politician. Sometimes that's being, deliberate and wise about, when is time to really comment on things and when it isn't. Because, when you're carrying a message that we're carrying and you want to talk about, real dysfunction in the courts, you realize that's hard enough in itself to bring people to, that you have to be very cautious about not losing people along the way. And to me, when I don't want to talk about...
Go ahead. Go ahead. Continue.
When I refute or when I refrain from talking about those things, it's not like, I'm afraid what somebody's going to think or say, or this might hurt my political future. It's people might tune out just because I'm talking about an issue when I need them to pay attention because they're the real issues that I want to talk about. So, everything that you said is well taken, and that's kind of my long non-answer to it. I like that way of avoiding it.
Yeah, I want you to kind of take that stance because we just, nobody wants, we want them to have nothing to attack you on so you actually can win. And then you can bring out anything you want.
Right, and I would, I would give voice to, these people out there that want to talk about some of these issues out here, because this is the problem. This is why people don't trust their government, because you start seeing, and maybe a lot of this stuff is made up, and, the Internet has created an environment where it's kind of hard to, sift the truth and the truth from fiction all the time. However, there's enough evidence out there on some of these issues that you need people to start talking about them. And I even think, and I don't want to go too far down this path, but let's talk about the Jade Home thing.
Okay.
There are a lot of people that have a lot of real strong feelings about it. And I don't know. I don't know the answers to these questions. But if you see how they're treated on the mainstream media, I flip back and forth between Fox and CNN and MSNBC. These people who have these concerns are just being absolutely ridiculed in the mainstream media. And somebody ought to just say, wait a second, let's talk about specifically, let's leave the question of whether this is a, a government opt, for purposes of instituting martial law or whatever the theory is. Let's leave that for another day. Let's start talking about why people have so little faith in their government that they're so willing to believe that is the case. Something like that could happen, and just kind of incrementally, advance those discussions. So, you need to have people that are willing to confront these things and talk about them. I am willing to talk about them. I'm willing to entertain everybody and give everybody a voice, because I think that's what lacked in this system. Unless you're a mainstream party politic, mainstream press player, you don't really have a voice in this system. And it's time that we start giving everybody a voice, because the voices that aren't being heard out there are getting louder and louder and louder and bigger and bigger. And,
right.
take something like the Federal Reserve System. 20, 25 years ago, you were looked at as a complete nutcase for talking about, that being the core problem in this country. Well, Ron Paul and his following, really changed the tune on that, even though it absolutely is astonishing to me that you get no coverage of that issue on the mainstream media at all. And I'm more of a TV person. I don't read the newspapers. I sit and when I'm working and I have the TV on. But, I sit here and just think. When I'm hearing them talking about income inequality and all these issues that are going on, I'm thinking, well, why don't they ever mention this phony Federal Reserve banking system that we have? Why don't they ever mention, corruption in the courts? Why don't they ever talk about these issues? They kind of have this box where they keep all their discussions and debates in, and it is, and thank God for the Internet. I think the Internet was a gift of God. It really has, opened a lot of people's eyes and ears to issues that weren't ever getting any coverage. So those are my thoughts about that.
Awesome.
If I might.
Yes, jump in there, Chris.
Well, this is Chris from Las Vegas, and I'm deeply studied in this area that you were speaking of about the 12B6 being used as what I like to determine a nuclear option to missile, using it as a weapon to destroy any complaint that they find to be from a pro se or any other individual that has any salient points and is dangerous to those that basically run the legal trade. And they've actually perverted and subverted. There's a paper written by Henry S. Noyes from Villanova Law called The Rise of the Federal Common Law Pleading Standard, Iqbal and Twombly. And what they've done, from diligent study I've done, is they've perverted what the cases say, and tried to reform the facts of the case to advantage legally to use the 12B6 to find any little minuscule technicality they can amplify as a defect in what's called a non-competent litigator's paperwork to dismiss what might reasonably be a very solid under Rule 8B2 complaint that meets the test of more likely than not that's required in Rule 8's proviso standards. But really what's terrible is they're using it to subvert, deny, and obstruct justice, due process. And in my case, I've specifically, before I ever had discovery, I had multiple petitions for trial by jury, and effectively never had any opportunity to even amend my complaint once before they nuked me. And so I'm in the riddle position of having to motion for reconsideration, recuse a judge under R60B, and likely will have to go to the Federal Circuit Court of Appeals in order to find relief before it's all over because of the egregious abuse of the judge's powers under the discretionary illusions and their apparent delusion that they have pure immunity from anything that they do. And I don't think that's absolutely lawfully correct. Thank you.
Well, yeah, Chris, I don't have a lot to say other than I feel your pain, and you're 100% correct, and it's awfully frustrating. The question that because this thing started creeping up. That I guess Conley v. Gibson was the original 12v6 standard, or maybe that's the summary. It's been a while since I've looked at the cases on that, but notice pleading is real simple. And I don't know, my question, these things started creeping up all of a sudden. I attended a conference, one of my continuing education conference, and this judge is up there talking about this new Twombly case, and how it's changed, pleading. And I'm sitting there looking at, and I remember it was a live conference, and I'm thinking, well, wait a second here, where is this coming from? And it's one of these judges who engineered cases. Her name is Sylvia Rambo here in Harrisburg. I don't care about naming names, honestly. They all know I talk about them all the time, and what are they going to do? If you actually, like you were saying, Chris, if you actually look at those cases, those cases aren't even really saying what these courts are relying on them to say. And, my question that I have is when the Supreme Court, was doing the Twombly case and the Iqbal case, and I have to go back and look at the facts, but Twombly wasn't even a Section 1983 case. That was like some kind of, I thought it had to do with like antitrust law or something like that. And
if I might,
yeah, when the Supreme Court was working these cases, were they trying to slip language in there that they knew could be expanded and used, or is all this stuff, being undertaken, some bright law clerk for some judge who wanted to find a way to cut people off, dug this language out of Twombly and Iqbal and felt that they had something, and then it started a trend where it expanded beyond what the Supreme Court needed. Honestly, the case needs to get back to the Supreme Court, and they need to rein that stuff in. But I'm 100% with you. And then you went through the exact process, and I just feel so bad for guys like you and everybody out there who, you're looking at these things the right way. And is it really that big of a deal to ask for justice from a court in the United States of America? I mean, that's kind of the mindset going in. Well, what am I doing wrong? I mean, my rights that were violated, and here you go into a court, and then they run you through the ringer over pleading issues, and then you're supposed to have under Rule 15, you're supposed to have, one amendment as a matter of course, and your rights should be, freely granted, and granted liberally, or whatever the language is in Rule 15. And then, you have to do reconsiderations to do things that are so obvious. And then, when you do a reconsideration, then your only rational conclusion is, well, this judge is biased or something, so you do a recusal, and then they make you look like the problem, and it's tragic. It's just absolutely tragic, and it just kind of sickens me to even hear these stories over and over again. So,
well, I should add a little more.
Like Chris, I wish there was something substantively and specifically that I can offer you, but the only thing I can offer you is Andy Ostrowski, both people who know what's going on out there and are going to start, doing things to change this.
Well, I can share with you a little bit more on. Go ahead.
No, Chris, you guys finish before the
next
one starts.
I was just going to say, where this really precipitates from is John G. Roberts, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, has sent down a theory that's been embraced by the judicial system and the district court judges and apparently much of the courts around the nation, that says that the judges should abandon their neutral, independent, third-party umpire position, and of course that's what he uses as a baseball analogy, and they should step down from the bench, and instead of being independent observers and deciders on the facts, or at least overseers, gatekeepers, if you will, they're supposed to now take a participatory role and either hit or pitch, which basically means the judge is supposed to abandon his judicial position and act as co-counsel to whatever suits the economic or other interest of the court, which is opposed to, it can be either side, but I think when it comes down to it, if it's a pro se versus a barred licensed attorney or a bank customer in particular, then the chances of having a lie against you, then you're fighting not only the opposite side, but now you're fighting the court itself as a co-counsel agent when he's now made himself culpable, liable, and suable as a private individual by abandoning his judicially neutral position.
There you go. And actually, just two quick comments. I know Randy had someone else with a question. One is, I don't approve of the way Justice Roberts has, politicized his role in that court and trying to politicize judges and doing. I'm not aware specifically of what you're talking about, but I'd like to read more about it. And two is, the biggest problem that you get down to is this judicial immunity issue. I mean, that's something that needs to be done away with and eradicated. And, these are examples of what happens. These judges just they're untouchable, and they do whatever they want, and then something needs to change in that area. So I appreciate your comments, Chris, and, just say that you're 100% on the ball. It's not you. So I hope that helps.
All right. There was a lady who wanted to make a comment or ask a question.
Hi. Yes, this is Rosanna from Ohio. Hi, Andy and Randy.
Hi.
Andy, hi. I wrote you earlier this year in February, and I sent you. I have 2 cases that I filed, and just real quickly, all of this is a result of my mother's murder that was inappropriately investigated. It's hanging open. It's still unsolved. My civil wrongful death suit was denied to me in a probate court, which is a right to me, that I to be able to take it to a jury trial. My father was abused from all of this in the court system probate. He was left living in filth, hoarding, and cat feces, and I'm serious. Then he was abducted to a nursing home. He's been trying to kill himself to get out, so their end result is to load him on drugs, mental illness, psychotropic drugs, to keep him quiet and shut up. I mean, this is a horrendous situation that I'm in, and because I won't go away, and I keep scratching and clawing for justice, they have eventually charged me with trespassing for being with my father. A child-parent relationship is now a crime because I won't let them get away with stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars from my parents' estate after all of this. Earlier, because of this arrest for these warrants for court costs that this city municipal judge performed on me, I filed to the 3rd District Court writ of prohibition to tell her to stop issuing warrants for court costs. I found out she's doing it for other people. You do know that's against the Constitution. You can't arrest people for civil issues. And so I filed this writ of prohibition. They denied it. You know what they denied it on? Are you sitting down for this? They said there was no warrant issued on me. Here's the warrant. They removed it from the leads. That's what they dismissed it on? So I sent you this earlier this year, and I'm assuming you got it. I think I emailed you too about this. I'm looking for someone that can help in this issue. I filed a writ of error to the Ohio Supreme Court and told them what the 3rd District did about dismissing my writ of prohibition on this city judge for issuing warrants for court costs and having me arrested by gunpoint. They took my body. And so the Ohio Supreme Court has now dismissed my writ of error, not for form or anything like that. They just dismissed it because the judge asked them to. That's what this dismissal says.
Yeah. Well, that's the good old boy network at play. And I vaguely recall.
Let him finish.
I vaguely recall that. I thought I might have responded to you and put you, because you had did you have a guardianship issue in your case too?
I've been trying to get guardianship of my father all these years to stop the abuse he was living in.
Yeah, well, I mean, you touched on just a whole panoply of issues that need to be addressed in the system, but what it boils down to is exactly, the frustration that everybody has, and that's our judicial system is broken. I mean, the writ of prohibition is your way to confine a judge to his proper role. And, because of the good old boys club and these judges and the appeals courts know the judges at the lower levels, and they pick up a phone and they make a call and say, oh, that's my buddy, that's my friend, we golf, or whatever, whatever the case might be. And I just wish somehow or other we could rein in these abuses of these judges and give them some lessons in sensitivity training to the people whose lives they're destroying. And I'm sorry, you ask whether I can help. Well, sure, I mean, I can look over documents and, you come up with a million ideas. It sounds like you're doing everything that you need to do, but I just don't know. Where your answer is. Your answer is, finding a way to address these systemic institutional problems in this court system in this country where people, I mean, you even touched on, this use of, county court proceedings to fill the coffers of the counties and get federal funds and matching funds and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's all what's going on. You're going into the teeth of every aspect that exposes the nature of this broken system. And, you say you scratch and claw, you've been scratching and clawing. That's all you can keep on doing, and just have faith and hold on until something changes. And I'm real sorry that I don't have anything specific to say, and there's no magic bullet out there. There's just, more like-minded people need to get together and generate interest in these issues and get people behind these issues and start talking about them. Now, I sent Randy after the show last week this project proposal that I've done, and I have something called the Pennsylvania Civil Rights Law Network. And I think that there should be a civil rights law network for every state in the country where people, every case let's take 42 section 1983 cases, and every docket that is open in the federal courts on these cases, we should have a parallel private docket where people can tell their story the way they want it to be told, where rather than the only thing being released to the public is the opinion of a judge. And you've got to understand, this is very the power of that judicial pen is immense. And it even to me to this day, when people come, I mean, I don't do it so much, but the first thing I want to do is I want to read, even though, people know that the judge's opinions are wrong and they're full of misinformation. The first thing I want to do when I look at somebody's information is, well, let me see what the judge has said about this. And, for me, I can read through that and I can understand that, truths are being shaded or, games are being played to make it look like there isn't a case there. But for the vast, vast majority of people out there, they read a judge's opinion and they say, well, the judge said this. And, well, the judge must be right. That's their operating presumption in life. So it's real complicated stuff. But, the proposal that I have submitted is let's do private docketing. Let's let people tell their own stories. Let's find a way to get this stuff out there and get people organized behind this idea of, everybody having their own private docket where you get to tell the story the way you want to tell it. And then let the truth fall where it may, because it's only going to be when the numbers of people out there complaining about this outweigh, the system, that there's going to be some kind of political change on these things. So, I encourage you to take a look at that, think about that, talk to your people about that. I have a project proposal on the Pennsylvania Civil Rights Law Network that spells it all out and spells out all these frustrations. And I really think that it's a strong and sound idea. It's going to need some funding. It's going to need some organization. It's going to need some interest and attention. But that's one way to do it. So that's what I have to offer for you there, Anna. Did you say it was Anna?
Well, Rosanna. Wouldn't this be like the common law grand juries? I mean, those are the people who investigate these things that come before them.
Well, there's another brilliant idea. I mean, there's this National Liberty Alliance group that's out there doing these common law grand jury things. I don't necessarily affiliate myself with them, but that's what needs to be done.
Well, I'm the state
common law grand juries recognized too.
Yeah, I'm the state coordinator for Ohio in that, and I believed in it. I wish that we'd be pushing harder than what it is right now. But we've got to have some independent investigation going on here, because I can't let this lay, Andy. This woman arrested me for court cause. You can't run around the country arresting. We're all going to be in jail. There might be lingering things out there from this that I don't know about yet. So,
well, can I comment on the common law grand jury? And you're getting to another main issue. And actually, I talked about this. I got some press coverage. A headline in the mainstream media. One of the first paragraphs talked about this common law grand jury idea. The problem that I see with the common law grand jury, the National Liberty Alliance, this whole principle, the way it's set up, is there's no enforcement mechanism for it. And we need, and these are issues that exist under Article 4 of the United States Constitution, the small r Republican form of government. The grand jury has been co-opted by the judicial branch in this country, by lawyers and judges and prosecutors. And, when there's a breakdown, there's no nexus between having the common law grand jury assemble and then how do you administer that case? I mean, I could talk about this in great length and in great detail, and I'm trying to summarize it, but that's one of the things that I talked about. We need national legislation that says when you have 25 people, 25 common citizens who come together, consider evidence, and return a true bill of indictment, the court system must honor that and must process that because there's no, ultimately it's all controlled by the courts, and you're never no court is ever going to just take what 25 people do say and they say, oh, okay, they have a case, let's process this case. You need somehow to bridge that issue there. But if I were you, rather than trying to, work within the structure and wait for National Liberty Alliance or whomever to do it, just get 25 people together. Find 25 people and present this evidence. Present the evidence to these people and say, do you find there to be a violation of my rights here? And when those 25 people do it, then submit it to a district attorney and say, here's an indictment. We want you to prosecute this. And let the district attorney, I propose this in a little more detail here in Pennsylvania. We're actually trying to work on something here. There's private criminal complaint options that you can submit something to a prosecutor and say, you've got to charge this. And let them start saying that 25 American citizens don't know, what a violation of rights is. And then if a prosecutor doesn't prosecute it, then you file a mandamus action. File something in the courts to demand that the court order. Part of the problem.
I did.
Okay. Well,
I've made criminal complaints to the prosecutor and submitted from the Ohio Rules of Criminal Procedure. I found the forms for us, the people, and I filled those out and presented them, but he won't do anything. Then I just went to the DOJ.
Did you get 25 people together?
I picked out. Yeah, well, I could put before 25 to present to him, but I picked out the statutes. I had them notarized. I had all my complaints notarized by a notary and under penalty of perjury. And so I put those to him, and I could do it, but I just went to the DOJ here in Southern District of Ohio. I went to them, and they sent me a letter asking for information. I think they're trying to brush it off. So I'm right before I can take this now to the federal grand jury, see if I'm blocked from them. If I'm blocked from the federal grand jury for these crimes, because I've been to the state, as you can see. I'm going to the state's denying me.
So you've been blocked already by the federal grand jury, or you're headed that direction?
I'm heading that way because I've been to the U.S. Attorney's Office in Southern Ohio, and if they're not going to do anything, see, they're the door to the federal grand jury. So if he doesn't want to help me, then if I could get the people and say I need to get to the foreman, I want to speak with the foreman of the federal grand jury to look at these crimes in the state, okay? And if they won't, then I'm blocked from the federal grand jury. We're blocked. We've proved we're blocked.
So Andy, do you have any advice there?
Well, yeah, my advice is, what I was talking about. You need to make political examples out of these issues, and the problem there is a problem that I'm talking about. If you have 25 common citizens who get together and consider this evidence and return their own bill of indictment, you shouldn't need another grand jury. You shouldn't need a grand jury controlled by a prosecutor then to determine whether what your 25 people have already found to be a violation of your rights. There needs to be. I do have advice. It gets a little complicated, and we'll run short on time if I get into the depths of it. But the problem there is, again, the problem that I'm talking about. The whole grand jury process has been co-opted and controlled by the judicial branch of government,
right,
and the lawyers. So in fact, I wrote something up on it. Maybe I'll send it to Randy, and she can post it up. And
or is it on your site? Is it on your site?
No, I didn't. I don't think I put it up on my site. I would get a lot more up on my site, but I'm a one-man show. I do everything myself, and I'm terrible in terms of the IT stuff, and I just don't have the support and help to do it. But I have something. I'll forward it. I'll find it. I'll forward it to Randy, and we'll try to get it to you.
Okay.
Sounds
good.
Before
you guys go, and Randy, I'm Rosanna, I'll write you to get that, okay? Before we go, there's just one other thing. The first judge that started all this corruption off in my cases, his name's Michael L. Brady. I found out he hasn't had an oath filed since 1991, all 4 terms. I filed a quo warranto and a mandamus to the federal court. It's now sitting on PACER in the federal court. I filed it in January. I put in all the bond company, the insurance company. I made them as a respondent, okay? okay, with this judge. And I put this to them, and they denied me at first, and they wrote, it is therefore recommended, this is in capitals and bold, recommended that this action be dismissed for lack of jurisdiction or for failure to state a claim upon which release can be granted. I made an objection to them. I accelerated my quo warranto and mandamus that I said, a quo warranto is not a complaint. It cannot be arbitrarily dismissed claiming no jurisdiction or failing a state of claim. And I went on, blah, blah, blah. This right now is still what I wrote to them and all these statutes, the rules, the Constitution violations, the Bible, the writs in the Bible, everything in there. I mean, footnotes were, I don't know, God wrote this for me, but it's still sitting there. What can I do with this?
Well,
the bond company did it.
You're running into the same problem. The courts just don't pay attention now, and one of the issues here that this leads to is, when the courts started enacting these rules of civil procedure, these modern rules of civil procedure, they say that they replaced all the old writs like quo warranto and things of that nature, but they're still recognized as a form of action. And if a court is still sitting on it, what do you do? Honestly, Rosanna, I don't know what to tell you, because everything that you're talking about is 100% valid, should be processed, but it's the breakdown in the system. It's the breakdown in the judicial system in this country that is causing you these heartaches and pain and frustration. And I feel your pain, and there is a lot that can be done and will be done, but you need to get organized behind these things and find a way to advance these issues. That's the best I can do for you. What do you do? What do you do? I mean, wish you could appeal to God,
I did write an amica curiae for one person. I wrote up a little amica curiae that anybody could submit on this to across the country for this.
Well,
I mean, I thought it was.
Email that to me. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see this stuff.
It's only 2 pages.
Pro warranto and all that stuff. I'd like to see that.
Okay. If you want to send it to me, Rosanna, or send it to him direct, however you want to do it.
Okay.
However you want to do it. Okay. Let's open up to another question or comment. Who else wants to get
comment right here? I called the Attorney General's office, and in my case, and they said that all I needed to do was go to the FBI with my evidence, because my case was dismissed with prejudice when I was kidnapped in July of 2013 by the Virginia Beach Police Department here in Virginia Beach, Virginia. And they said all I had to do, and I talked to the Attorney General's office at the U.S. Attorney General's office, and
U.S. Attorney's office.
And it's in Virginia too, and there's some crime victim unit specialist that answered the phone, and all she said, and she talked to me for like 45 minutes, really super nice, and just said, all you really need to do is just get the FBI involved, and they have to act. So I don't know if is it Rosanna that was on the phone?
Yeah.
Rosanna.
Okay, because I'm my PTSD and depression setting in with the extended whiplash from 3 years ago. It's just it's kind of rewiring my mind. So, but you gotta gather your evidence. You gotta constantly gather your evidence, back it up, scan everything in, back it up onto a cloud server, get it over to some friends. That's why Andy's saying get 25 people involved. I've got as many people as I can involved with my case from the East Coast to the West Coast at this point. But I just wanted to let everybody know that that's what that Andy, is it the crime victim unit?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not sure exactly what unit it is. And what was your name, sir?
Dan.
Dan. And you make a great point there. And first of all, I when I hear get the FBI involved, I mean, I kind of roll my eyes and think, oh, yeah. Okay.
No doubt.
Yeah.
I know.
But you're absolutely
because
right.
They got busted.
No.
They got busted faking all their forensic evidence for 20 years. I know. I know what you're saying.
Not just that, but they're controlled ultimately in a lot of these things by the U.S. attorneys, and the U.S. attorneys are part of the judicial system. They're part of this system. But all that being said, even though it's in many ways it's banging your head against the wall, you need to start inundating these people, these FBI people, with these complaints. And don't let the breakdowns in the system stop you from trying to use the system. And that was Dan's suggestion to you, Rosanna. It was a good one. Make sure
the FBI is involved.
Okay.
The FBI is involved. They're supposed to be looking for my brother, who's the suspect of mom's death.
Let him finish,
I was working with the fella, and I'm still working with a guy here by the name of Lou Jasikoff, who does this independent Gazette. We're starting to do some independent media ventures here in Pennsylvania. And he started, he contacted the FBI with all these people through these domestic relations courts. And remember, Pennsylvania is the home of this Kids for Cash scandal that I'm pretty sure you probably have all heard of. And we also had this Penn State Sandusky thing that happened. That was a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
And, we had an FBI agent, say, okay, start getting me your stories. People started getting him their stories, and all of a sudden he got quiet. He went quiet. But you got to just inundate, your FBI, all your law enforcement people with what's going on here. And again, it's got to be, it has to keep building and building and building until something tips this balance, in favor of the people and away from the system. And that's all that can be done. So I appreciate your input there, Dan. And Rosanna, if you've already done it, then keep doing it and find other people out there to, tell their stories to the FBI. And at some point, they're just going to have to start paying attention to this stuff. And that's what happened with this, this Kids for Cash thing that you've all heard about. Again, I'm just assuming everybody heard about that. This was not just two rogue judges here in Pennsylvania who had a dirty deal and had their fingers, were getting their pockets lined by, guys who were running these juvenile facilities. It's a whole system that supported what they were doing, and it went on for years and years leading up to these things. And there were many law enforcement people, many U.S. attorneys, many FBI agents who had all the evidence that they needed well before 2009 to start looking at what was happening here, and could have avoided all those issues long ago. But nobody paid attention to it until it gets to the point where, what happened was, some of the mothers, some of the people started getting the ear of the right people, and finally, they just couldn't conceal it anymore, so they had to do it. And these two judges were the fall guys, and, thank God, those two judges, Carnahan and Civarella here in Luzerne County, Pennsylvania, were justly convicted and justly incarcerated. But, and I don't have all my details on this, but I think there was a civil suit that was handled in federal court over it that granted these guys immunity for damages because what they were doing was in their judicial capacity. So there's still some lingering problems, but, it was because of the numbers of people in that case that it finally turned. In fact, my former law partner, this Don Bailey, who I talked about, is just an American hero and a real tragic story what they did to him. He was giving evidence to a local U.S. attorney here about this stuff years before it happened, and they just sit on it, and they do nothing because they're protecting the powers that be. So just make your voices known and do like Dan, what you're doing, networking with people across the country to generate interest in these things, and just make our voices louder and louder and more numerous. And ultimately, with persistence and patience, something is going to change because we're talking about justice here. And, not to, get to pontificate too much, but, the justice business is God's business, That's what we're doing. We're doing God's work when we're doing this stuff, and we're fighting a lot of dark, sinister, evil influences. And, you just got to have the strength in your spirit to know that you're doing the right thing and just stick with it and be tenacious and be persistent and just know that all your suffering is going for a larger purpose, and that is, bringing some peace and justice to this world. So I don't know if that helps anyone, but that's kind of how I make myself able to deal with the lifestyle I live and fighting these fights day in and day out and not having a life of my own because I'm consumed with this stuff all the time. But it's very worth it stuff to be consumed with.
But that's how they convert us, Andy. They make us out to be terrorists by calling us fighters, and then we use the word fight, and then we use the word God, and then they think we're talking about their God, Zeus.
Yeah.
Bail.
Exactly. Chris, back me up here.
Bail.
Next question. Anybody else have a comment or question? I know Randy in Georgia. If you're able to unmute, go ahead and ask your question.
Yes. This is James.
All right, James, go ahead.
Writing an affidavit. I have found that they give you a choice to stand in the jurisdiction without the 10-mile square. It's executed without United States, you start your affidavit, I declare under penalty of perjury, under the laws of the United States of America, that the foregoing is true, correct, then you date it and sign it. That puts you without the 10-mile square, and that could be a remedy for the first defect.
Are you, Andy, are you aware of the difference between the corporation and the republic?
Well, you know, I'm aware enough to know generally what Randy's talking about there, and I've started to study that issue, but I've never gone through it to be the expert on it. I mean, that's just another one of those things. That's one of those. I mean, you know, when doing what I do, I don't have a team and staff of people generating memos for me and doing all my research for me. So I'm aware of it. I've touched upon it. I don't know that I'm an expert in it or conversant enough to be able to say categorically that, you know, he's 100% right or not. So if you want to address it, Randy, you go ahead and maybe you can educate me a little bit.
Hello? Yeah, well, a lot of people on the call totally get it. I hear a couple people definitely want to comment. So I heard Gloria first. Go ahead, Gloria, and then I don't know who the second one was, but go ahead, Gloria.
It was Randy.
Title 28, Section 1761 or 2. One is without the United States. Basically, it's called unsworn declaration. And when you do that, you do not have to notarize a document. You could actually sign it by yourself.
Well, that's a verification. Yeah, that's an unsworn verification, unsworn declaration under 28 U.S.C. I thought it was 1764 or something like that.
Yeah, actually, when I litigate on a mortgage case, I did not do any affidavit, and I just used that and signed it and put it into the case.
Yeah, I'm aware of that law. Yeah.
And basically the banks defeated.
And I don't know on what grounds they would have defeated that.
On the Admiralty common law.
Okay.
Because we are running on the Admiralty, and the common law has to be given by the state court or federal court. And that's under Title 28, Section 1333.
Okay.
So a mortgage case is basically maritime lien, and so common law shall be given. And the common law in their term means a trial by jury, and also you could use the case laws. And case laws are actually known as the laws of the United States of America, several states. And the codes are not law. The case laws are the laws of the state. Any case law in any 50 states is a full faith and credit, and you can use it. So do not use anything else but case law. And any case law is not a constitutional case law. Then it is null and void by the Madison versus Mulberry versus Madison. So all the case law that are constitutional and give us your constitutional rights, you can use it. Otherwise, you cannot use any other thing that is not giving you constitutional rights.
Gloria, are you from Pennsylvania?
Yeah.
I know you, right?
I don't know.
I met you up in Scranton last year, I believe.
Oh, that's you?
Yeah, that's me.
With Veronica?
Yeah, with Veronica.
Okay. Yeah.
I get your email.
Yeah, I met you there.
Yeah. And again,
okay,
I mean, these are. Go ahead, Randy. I'll let you talk.
No. Go ahead, make your comment. I was just going to pull Randy in for his comment. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, my comment is, again, this is another area, I've seen a lot of stuff. I mean, I'm familiar with all these concepts, and every time, and nothing, I'm not hearing anything new for the first time. It's just that I cannot hold myself out as the expert in these things. I would defer to other people on a lot of the admiralty, maritime jurisdiction, the whole 10-mile square within corporate versus republic. I need to be. I'm not poo-pooing it. I'm not putting it down at all. I'm just not the expert in it, and I want to know it a little bit better. I mean, I've started to read the Act of 1871, and I'm trying to follow some of this whole corporate United States idea. But I just have not reached the ultimate conclusion myself yet. And I'm just not one to believe just because I hear it somewhere that it's the truth. I need to study.
If you read about the Constitution, basically all 50 states went into a union. And basically the Constitution states that the United States shall guarantee a republic form of government to a several state.
Right.
So basically several states are a republic. Yeah. They have to give a republic form of government.
I understand.
So which means Constitution all kicks in, and the people, even you're not a citizen by birth is national, and who is not a naturalized also national. But someone who is not a citizen, national, will consider as a citizen, but also citizen residing in 50 state union is also called national of the United States under Title 8 U.S.C. Section 1101 A22. So citizen of the United States is national of the United States. So basically, the citizens are basically, it could be trust. It could be man or woman who never sworn an oath of allegiance and never became American nationals, but they do reside within the state of the union, and they are considered as a state citizen.
So
Gloria, does everybody
need to get together on that? Off the call.
Yeah, we should get together, Gloria, at some point. Get in touch with me. But go ahead. Someone else had a question.
I'll make sure that happens. Randy from Georgia, did you want to break in there now?
Yeah, I had a very simple question, and it is this: Andy? What is your perspective on seeking non-judicial remedy versus a Title 42 action?
Non-judicial remedy versus a Title 42 action. What do you give me an example of what you're talking about?
Well, I've heard talk on the call about going after judges' oaths of office and the insurance that backs that oath and stuff like that. So when we say non-judicial remedy, we're talking about like salvage liens and things like that, where you're attacking the bond that is tied to their oath of office. Versus trying to seek remedy through Title 42.
I got you, and I understand what you're saying. But ultimately, Randy, what do you have to? I mean, to enforce these things, I've been thinking about that myself. And this issue on these oaths of office. People in the system, and you got to remember. I mean, I was practicing lawyer for well over 15 years, and I've been in this business for, going on 25 years. And, I was as brainwashed as the next lawyer out there. And, you start talking to lawyers and judges about these oaths of office issues, and they look at you like you're crazy because it's just like a form, it's form over. But, I'm feeling where you're coming from, and these oaths of office things are very important, and so are the bonds. But, Randy, here's the problem. What do you do when you get to the point when you want to enforce an obligation under the bond? What do you have to do? You got to sue. You got to sue in court. Yeah, you can file a claim on the bond, but when they reject your claim, what do? You got to go to court ultimately on all these things, and that's where I see those things falling. I was actually just having that discussion with someone recently about that issue. I was at that conference in Colorado a couple of weeks ago, and that came up, and that was my exact response. The enforcement mechanism, the dispute resolution system in this country is in the judiciary. And you might well have a valid claim under a public official's bond for a violation of an oath. But in order to, nobody's just going to roll over and say, oh, yeah, okay, you're right, here's your check. They're going to say, well, we deny your claim. And then what do you do when they deny your claim? You got to file a lawsuit over it. Then you're right back in the same system. So I think it gives you something to go on, but, to reveal further problems. but I don't think it, you call it a non-judicial remedy, but it ultimately is going to have to be enforced one way or the other judicially. Same with the common law grand jury stuff. Ultimately, these things have to go through the judiciary in this country. People do not realize the power and control that the judiciary has over what's going on in this country, and all of these issues are just showing, the nature of that problem and what we're up against.
Can I get in contact with Randy, who's talking about this oath and these bonds, right? Can I get in Randy, can you put me in contact with him?
Who are you? Who's talking?
Rosanna.
Yeah, send me an email asking me for Randy and George's information. I'll put you guys in touch. Okay?
Okay, because that's what this core warrant is on. So I want to talk, and I'll get this to Andy too. But I include the bond and the insurance company on this. They're included.
Okay, hey, Andy, I've got a question for you. Randy has an interesting story. He sent what was the paperwork, Randy, that you sent to the clerk of court? You sent it certified. They needed to sign for it. It was return receipt. And when they signed, Andy, they signed, instead of their real names, they signed Luke Skywalker, and what was the other one, Randy?
Darth Vader.
Darth Vader.
Who did that?
Yeah.
Who did that?
The clerk of court.
So somebody at the courthouse signed a return receipt as Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader.
Well, hold on to that stuff and get that to me someday. We're going to make a big political issue out of that. That is just absolutely outrageous, absolutely disgusting. Yeah. I don't even know what to say to that other than, oh my gosh, we are going to use that to show people how abusive people in this system can be to you. I mean, what a total slap in your face. That is just absolutely reprehensible.
Right there. Because, they signed false information. Clearly they're not Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader. And it was sent directly to the clerk's office. Is that not a Title 42? What is that?
Well, that would be, Title 42 or Section 1983 only applied. This was in federal court? These were federal court officials? It
was a state court. So.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, that would be Title 40. That would be a Section 1983 action.
Mail fraud.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Technically, a mail fraud is a criminal statute. You find that, the courts under Section 1983 will say, well, that's a criminal law. We don't enforce that under Section 1983. But then, the rights under color of law, that's under color of law. I mean, a lot of these issues have been so mistreated by the courts over the years that they've lost sight of what the real issues are. But, that's a clear violation of your rights. It's just an absolute insult for somebody to be able to do that. And at the very least, you should write a letter to your county officials and point out that they have done that and make a complaint. That's a huge issue. That is a very, very insulting way for public officials to act. I mean, I can just picture these people snickering, while they're sitting behind their counter and saying, I'm going to sign Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker and slap these people in the face. And I'm offended for you by hearing something like that. I'm real sorry that happened to you.
Wouldn't that be impersonation?
There were other issues throughout this entire case that I could discuss, but for lack of time and other people have questions, I'll not even mention those. But I can type those up and send them to you in an email or something.
Yeah, you definitely should, Randy. It.
Yeah, and you guys just have to understand, I mean, again, I'm a one-man show. I try to help everybody that I can. Just be patient with me and getting back to you. And if you don't hear back from me, I really do try to get back to people. But, just be patient with me. We're trying to do a lot of work here, and I don't have a lot of help doing it. So just don't get angry.
Rosanna, actually, you should take a look at the number 4, cornersdoctrine.wordpress.com. There is the Fridays they have a talk show, and Hartford Van Dyke comes out, and he talks about the criminal complaint and the way he files criminal complaint. Once you have a full process done and they don't give you remedy, he filed complaint in federal court, and he scattered like 10,000 copies all around the neighborhood. And basically people end up quitting their jobs, that they can't go on anymore because there's criminal cases all over the news.
Yeah.
We have before we keep going on that, because we can talk about that after. We've got Andy for just 10 more minutes, you guys. So hold that thought, Gloria and Rosanna. Who else has questions or comments for Andy?
If I may, I got one comment. Don't give them any prestige. These people are not public officials. They're public servants.
Excellent. Thank you, Dave. Any other comments or questions for Andy?
Yes, Jim from Arizona.
Yes, sir. Go for it, Jim.
Andy, I sent you a request on your Facebook and gave you my email address so that we can be in touch. I'm the guy that wants to ban the bar. So.
Oh, you know what? I saw that stuff. I was reading some of that the other day. Yeah. That was actually pretty interesting.
On jimsforum.com?
I forget, but I think you might have had a link or something posted on your Facebook. I was reading something about it. I thought that you were doing some good work there. I have to study it a little bit more.
Okay.
I mean, and just if I could really comment on this, I mean, this audience is probably knows about the original 13th Amendment. Again, I came across that about a year and a half ago, and I looked at that and I go, yeah, right, But I started reading some stuff about that, and the whole principle of it makes complete sense. I mean, you got to understand, and let me just explain that to you. And I don't even know if I need to explain it to you, but I'll say it anyway. When an attorney holds a law license, they take an oath as an officer. You all heard that term. You're an officer of the court. Well, if you're an officer of the court, how can you also be a member of a legislature? You are violating the separation of powers without regard to this 13th Amendment. I had thought about this issue myself. If your first obligation is to the courts, then how can your first obligation be to the people that elected you? You have a conflict of interest when you're an attorney holding a public office.
Absolutely. That's also in Article 1. Section 9, last verse, no title of nobility.
But there's no penalty in that one. There's no penalty. It says it, but there's no penalty. That's why 13 is so important.
Because it doesn't allow it.
It's also in 10, and you're exactly right. That's the reason they initiated the original Title of Nobility Act, was to provide some teeth
penalty
or enforcement mechanism to the original First Amendment's protections.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, getting back to what the problem really is I see that we need to go on the offensive, and I thought maybe you could be of help to some people that maybe they're not really right on as far as writing briefs or things like that, and that's kind of what my request is. And foreclosures especially, there's a lot of violations here in my area, and I thought that maybe, we could talk about the RICO Act as well, going with and combining that with a Title 42, because Title 42 is civil, and RICO can be done both civil and criminal.
Mm-hmm. Any comments there, Andy?
Well, absolutely. Again, I've seen some stuff about these RICO actions. I've never become the RICO expert that I need to become. But, by all means, those are the things that need to be explored and need to be, gone after. And, this is how, the legal system can be used, for a real valid and legitimate political purpose that's not an abuse of the system. If you can get people, like all these people on the call and all the people that you're connected to, and we can come together and get behind people, to do, RICO lawsuits to go after these issues, you can reveal some serious problems in this system that need to be addressed. And, even though I'm technically, and I'm going through, I think I covered this a little bit last week, just so everybody knows out there, I'm not currently a licensed lawyer. I went through the disciplinary process, and I got nothing to hide. I've got a whole personal disclosure out there that talks about all my history. But ultimately, since when do you need a licensed lawyer? I mean, there's this whole notion of assistance of counsel. And, those are some of the things, and I mean, sometimes I sit here and think of myself talking and think if these disciplinary authorities are here listening to me talk, they'd be freaking doing backflips. But I just don't care, really, honestly. But, I mean, we need to get people out there to really buck this attorney licensing system and to say, no, I want Andy Ostrowski to represent me. I heard him. He's competent. I'm an adult individual. I'm capable of handling my own affairs. Nobody's going to tell me that this guy can't come into court and represent me as my assistant of counsel. So, I mean, what was your name there, fellow from Arizona? Jim, was it?
Yeah, James Jones.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and you're 100% right. And I need to study this stuff a little bit more. I want to educate myself a little bit more, and I'll look at your stuff, and we'll stay in communication. I appreciate you reaching out to me.
Well, what is the bar on my website will give you insight that,
Can you shoot me a link in my private message on Facebook?
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
If anybody's interested, there's a case in Columbus, Ohio. A lawyer has been charged with RICO, and he was involved in the probate guardianship cases. So if anybody wants to look at that, it's a very interesting case. I mean, the more you learn about these things from it happening to a minority, then you can get some help, thinking how to write them and how to run them and how to exercise them. So he's in Columbus. He was just charged last fall, but he's charged with RICO.
Do you know what the name of the case is? Do you know?
It's Paul Cormanick. Paul Cormanick is the lawyer who's been charged. He was in a lot of guardianship. He's a lot of guardians for a lot of wards, and he's been charged with RICO. So
excellent. Paul
Cormanick is his name, and that's his case is going on now. They're taking him to task now.
Well, I would just want to.
So, hello, can you hear me?
Who is that?
This is Ron.
All right, you got about 1 minute. Go for it, Ron.
So
we got to let Andy go here shortly.
Yeah, basically what I'm hearing is lawyers do not have immunity when they're litigating a case if they're breaking the law.
Well, they do have judicial. There's some quasi-judicial immunity that lawyers have, and I haven't looked at that law in a while, but I wouldn't say they absolutely don't have immunity. There's some immunity that applies to them, and this whole immunity issue needs to be attacked as well. It's just another political angle on this thing. So many issues, folks. So many issues, and we're going to get to all of them. And you're going to start, spreading the name of people like Andy Ostrowski. And it's not because it's me, but because I have, through my own experience and listening to people like you, and we've got to find other people out there like me who are in the know, who have experienced this system themselves, who have the courage to get out there, because it does. I mean, I'm at this stage in my life. I've lost a lot in my life. And, Janis Joplin said it best when she said freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. And, you just realize at some point that you just got to go all the way with it. And, we just got to start getting behind people who are willing to just, go for it and just start talking about the issues that need to be talked about.
Awesome. Well, I know I'm speaking on behalf of everyone that's on this call. I know you need to go, and we thank you so much for coming out. And
I don't need to go.
As was last week. Andy does. That's who I'm talking to. So, Andy, thank you. You have an awesome night, and
thanks.
Hopefully we'll be
and we'll do it again. Yeah, I mean, I enjoy these talks, and I'll be happy to do it again. So we'll stay in touch, Randy, okay? And thanks, everybody, for your questions, and we'll talk soon, and you get in touch with me through Randy, okay? Have a good night.
Great.
All right, take
Andy,
care.
You have a super week. We'll talk to you soon.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Okay, so somebody else mentioned, I don't have to go. Who's that? Did you want to make a comment?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
I'm
who
James.
is that? James. Go ahead, James.
It sounds like Rosanna has the original story, which can be transcribed to a letter of affidavit, which would go into a criminal complaint and operated at presentment operated under Title 18, Section 4. Which trying to put the horse before the cart. we should go into Title 18, Section 4, and then it becomes a lien. Stay out
Rosanna?
of court.
I'm listening.
I can hardly hear him.
Yeah,
Stay
can
out
you
of
speak up,
court.
James?
Yes,
We can
stay
barely
out.
hear you.
I watched.
You're far from the phone.
I watched YouTube. I typed in Hartford Van Dyke, and about 6 days ago, he gave his telephone number and his procedure. This is something the individual can do to stay out of court. Comments, criticisms, point of view.
Speak up, please, James.
Comments, criticisms, point of view on going to YouTube, typing in Hartford Van Dyke and watching what 6 days ago he was talking about.
Anyone? He's open-ending that question, whoever's seen that video on YouTube with Hartford Van Dyke. And by the way, it's open line, you guys, so everyone can talk now. Just do not run each other over. I'm going to mute you. I don't care where you're at in your sentence if you're running
James,
each other over.
I'm still having a hard time hearing you.
Yeah, James, if you can speak up, the one that was just talking, just you're far from your phone to the
Randy.
Yes.
Randy. Yeah, I know Hartford has been on USA Prepares a couple of times with Vincent Finelli, and I know that's up on YouTube. And he's also been on The Truth Traveler with Aaron Dakins. They're both GCNlive.com programs, and they have archives there, but they also are on YouTube. So I'm not sure if that's what James is talking about, but I don't think Hartford does anything by himself on YouTube. I yield.
No, it's, you go to YouTube and type in Hartford. Yes, you are correct. Vincent Pinelli's classes come up.
I think we lost him. You there, James?
Yes.
Okay, listen to me. We can barely hear you. Can you turn your volume up or get closer to your phone?
My volume's up. I'll get closer to the phone.
Perfect. Okay.
Hartford suggests Rosanna has the story, the original story, which goes into a affidavit. That exposes the first defect. That goes into a criminal complaint, which goes into Title 18, Section 4. You operate that presentment under Title 18, Section 4. I yield.
Okay. I got you.
So
I'm
that's
following
the rest of a bond?
No, Rosanna, your situation is very complicated, but it's certainly one that has a great amount of facts, evidence, law, and merit to it.
Yes.
The unfortunate circumstance you're facing is in the states who are well noted to habitually abuse the rights of the people who live within. They have the bar club, and of course thereby the state is fully hometowned, and they have a tendency to circle the wagons against anyone who's trying to go after what they perceive as their own and threatens their own's existence.
You said it spot on. That's spot on.
I will caution you, however, that it may be difficult, at least in the first levels of the federal court system, but generally once you get beyond that and get into the appeals section, if you know how to competently represent or present your own interest in your citizenship capacity to separate yourself from the 14th Amendment onerous operations that puts you into the public policy, which is truly the private legal aspects of the administration of Congress's plenary powers, where it says subject to the power of Congress, thereby making you a slave, and what Congress gives, Congress can take away, as opposed to being an American national, a state national American, more correctly. and having your absolute natural rights some are preserved within the enumerated protections provided in the Constitution. Therein, you can, by proper language and wording, approach the Federal Circuit Courts of Appeals, and when you do so, it becomes a trial de novo or a new trial, effectively, but they have to look at all the pleadings that previously were filed, and it wasn't within the four corners, as Gloria was speaking before, of the paperwork that you submit. In other words, you really want to be fully comprehensive, including every wrong that you can possibly conjure and recall that applies to your situation, in case they may find one or two that fall by the wayside. If you have objective, provable facts to back up most of your claims, which it sounds like you do, then you have a very good chance when you have a true Article III justice, as opposed to a mere magistrate or a former bar attorney masquerading as a judge in the lower courts. And you've had such a horrific amount of abuse, I would heartily suggest you might want to read two cases, not long cases particularly, but they're particularly, one of them is very noted and constantly referred to by police and defense attorneys and everyone else, and that one is Bivens versus 6 unknown federal narcotics agents. And that's a Title 42, 1983 civil rights violation suit that awarded treble damages because of the egregious abusive nature of what had occurred and the violating of civil rights and using all sorts of nefarious means to fabricate the evidence and the conclusions they used to convict the individuals and wrongfully gain fruits of the poison tree evidence. Another one very akin to that one is termed Rotella, R-O-T-E-L-L-A, versus Woods, W-O-O-D-S, Supra. And the only place I know that you can find that was on the USAM, the United States Attorney General's manual website. But it, too, is a civil rights violation, and I think it's also a RICO. However, from recent experience, I will tell you, when you put RICO on your complaint as opposed to sticking to the pure civil rights violations, it goes into what they classify as complex litigation, because it has elements of fraud that must be proved by intent, multiple actors, multiple victims, multiple crimes usually, and thereby you run the risk of having your case defaulted under that 12b-6 that we were speaking of earlier, that you so unfortunately ran into the same experience I have with everybody trying to find some little minutia that's inconsequential to dismiss your case on failure to state a claim for which relief can be granted, which is absolutely ludicrous. Right. And that's also known as the Schultz defense, where they claim they see nothing, and they fail to observe the material, substantive, objective facts, raw and evidence that you have in your case.
Right before them. Yep.
And so,
blinders.
Well, yeah, they intentionally blind themselves because it doesn't suit their economic or other bar or power or perhaps other interests. They could be fiduciary, they could be power, they could be sex or substance driven. And they're all human and all subject to the frailties of the human psyche and the weak will, and thereby able to be co-opted, corrupted, and perhaps bribed or otherwise seduced, induced, or coerced into making decisions that don't suit the interest of justice.
Right. Suits their interest of justice.
Yeah, it's just us. They don't call it the criminal's just us system for nothing.
Right.
Criminals are running the system. So those are things that I would suggest. And, of course, Randy has good Title 42 paperwork, and they are viable claims, and they do succeed occasionally by pro se's, although an in natura pro per is generally then converted by the courts into a pro se because it suits their agenda of marking them for elimination. Mm-hmm. In fact, I'm writing a pretty strong supplement to a brief as we're speaking that is addressing some of these same diabolical twistings of the facts, law, and evidence by what is termed the judicial experience. In fact, they call it a version of common law judicial experience, where they try to pretend that because of their limited scope of experience in the world, they can use their own experience to subjectively, reinterpret your case to the perspective or vision that suits their own political or other agendas, and replace your facts, law, and evidence with their own perverted twistings and hearsay conclusory theories that don't have any fact, law, or evidence. And then you have to go through and with a fine-tooth comb pick apart every one of their claims or statements that's wrong and point out and reframe it and take particular note that they are perverting your experience and your vision and your perception of the case to their own interest without any facts, law, or evidence to support their conclusory theories.
Right.
And thereby you can undermine their ability to twist the facts to their own case. But mine is going even deeper than that, and it's attacking at their heart and roots of the perversion of the law to the bar's interest and the subversion of the access to justice and due process of the people. When you don't have the opportunity to discover, you don't have the opportunity to have your trial by jury, the judge then acts as a tyrant. And what they're truly creating when they do that, denying all substantial justice and all due process of law, they are creating effectually a 6-point star bar chamber of Satan, commonly known as the Star Chamber, and acting as a unilateral, secret legal group to destroy your rights.
Yeah, I write this all the time. You're speaking my language. What was your name? I'm sorry.
This is Chris near Las Vegas.
Chris in Las Vegas?
Near Las Vegas, yes.
Near Las. If I could get those cases from you, I'm real big about reading the stuff. It makes more sense to me when I can read it. I'm just one of those creatures.
Well, perhaps Randy might send your information to me, and I'll put you on my email list of people that are interested in fighting the same sorts of corruption that I'm fighting.
Okay. I do have something interesting to tell you since you're all speaking about 42 U.S.C. 1983. I do know a case that was filed against this Judge Brady, who doesn't have the oath, which I have the quo warranto in the federal court right now over. He got a 72-year-old lady murdered. I mean, really, he did. And the family filed a U.S.C. 1983 against him and the county commissioners. But don't you know, they settled out of court. They won.
Well, I think that's a very powerful concept. I've been promoting that for quite a while, that really, rather than the sheriff, although you can include him too, that the county commissioners, by the controlling language of the employment contract, where the elected sheriff then becomes subservient to the Board of Supervisors of the county commission, subject to that board, that's how they get their lucrative employment. They pervert their interest to the interest of the county commission as opposed to serving the people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very complex, but you're pointing out a very important point, that those county commissioners, whenever the bad actors are operating under them, whether it's the district attorney or the sheriff or some of the hireling agents the sheriff purportedly manages to get him a bail of immunity, at least a pretensive bail of immunity, they are still culpable, liable, and suitable for the violations of civil rights. And if you include them, your chances of success or getting a settlement are probably far increased and escalated to a high degree of possibility.
Yeah, these are the cases they don't want you to hear about. That case right there was never reported in the news once they settled, and it should have had. It was a big, big case up there in the Bell Fountain, Logan County, Ohio area, because the woman got murdered on Christmas Eve morning. And anyway, by a boy that got out of a group home, which the judge and the commissioners were in charge of the group home. That's what happened. So the family, of course, the boy was found guilty, and that's why they went and sued the judge and the commissioners. So they don't have immunity. They want you to believe that, but they don't.
Well, not when they act outside of scope, sphere, and color of law. Once they do that, they become mere outlaws, and that's when you can get them. Because, but you don't sue them in the name of the county or the city. You sue them in their private capacities. You might conjoin the city or county if you can prove pattern, practice, custom of bad behavior that complicitly involve the acts of failing to properly train or supervise the people that work under their contracts with the city or county.
Mm-hmm. And there's a few other people in there, but the major players were the commissioners and the judge. I can get that. You mean it's on Pacer, of course, and I'll have to send you that. If you can get to Pacer, you can look this case up. It was very easy to follow, really, and so I can get that to you. And I won the first case I had to file against this Judge Brady. He was holding public records from me, and I had to file a writ of mandamus against him. It went up to all the way to the Ohio Supreme Court, and I won. I knew these records were public records, and I did win that case. And that was the first case I lost, and after that, I've lost everything. I've had 6 cases go to the Ohio Supreme Court. And the first one I won on that public records writ, and then after that, I've lost everything. But when I won that public records writ, that's the first time that was ever done in Ohio, and he had to pay my lawyer's fees for that, too. They granted me the lawyers. But, again, I did that for the people because we should fight for our public records, and we needed a public record to write a brief for my dad's guardianship case. And so I did that as much for the people as I did for my dad's guardianship case, but after that I've lost everything. My father suffered horrendously. He's chemically restrained right now.
Well, I can tell you that there are these diabolical schemes of inducting the seniors into the state's version of care so they can loot the assets of the estate and beat the heirs to the punch.
Yes.
And this is abuse of their fiduciary position. Absolutely.
It's epidemic across the country, just like CPS. It's either CPS or APS. They're taking the adults, they're taking the kids, they're taking everything. It's civil forfeiture.
Well, this civil asset forfeit, in fact, I was just reading, they got a new label for it. They call it the abandoned property division or something. Well, all it is a circumvention of eminent domain. If they can try to claim your properties abandoned, they can do a negative acquisition, a negative averment, or there's another name for it skipping my mind right now. But they try to steal property, they try to steal your bank accounts, assets, cars, anything they can get their hands on. These absolute criminals are just the ilk of the earth. And I agree with the concept. We really need to get rid of the bar. It has got a strokehold on the legal system. And until it's done away with and we return the courts being overseen by the people, so we can return common law grand juries, not instruments of the prosecution. This country we right now are living in a effectually lawless society where chaos is running amok, and we have systemic corruption from law enforcement, courts, to doctors, to legal people. The whole thing is a government by oligarchical kleptocrats or government by gangsters. So thank you very, very much.
Yes. You're right. They, you know, and even if we get rid of the bar, the thing of it is, this judicial branch of the government, they own all the departments of the executive branch. They own the guys with the costumes, the badges, and the guns. They'll threaten you. I have been arrested twice and never been found guilty. By gunpoint, my body was taken, and they think nothing about this. I've never been in trouble my whole life. This is terror.
Yeah, they're the real terrorists. Nobody on this call disputes or doubts what you say. I mean, we know. So, comments or questions for Rosanna? Okay, I think.
Sounds like you're close with the liens.
Say that again?
It sounds like she is very close going down the road to lien their bond.
Well, see, this is what I'm trying to do in this writ of error that I filed at the High Supreme Court. I put the judge's bond in there. I'm sorry, the Corsa is insurance. She doesn't have a bond. She's a city municipal. So I know who the Corsa insurance for the city is. I attached them as the respondents. I put them right on there, and when I quote warranted, when you see this, Randy, you'll see it. This judge, I found one of his 2 bonds he's supposed to have. He doesn't have the other one, and the one bond he does have, he got late, so it's no good. He got it past the time he was supposed to have gotten it. And then I also put the county risk, of course, the insurance company as a respondent too. I've got the proper people on this quo warranto. There's no doubt. And they answered. They actually answered. So that's why I want to do something with this, because the guy doesn't have his oath legal. He doesn't have a legal oath for 4 terms. That's 24 years. Do you know what can of worms that's going to open up? Oh, my gosh.
More cases, yeah.
Oh, my gosh. And it's just sitting there because you know why. Because you know I'm right.
It's a criminal complaint.
Yeah, I could turn these in very easily. I could put those on the form and put them to criminal. Then we got to take them to enforcement. Where's the enforcement? We're always back to the same thing.
Title 18, United States Code, Section 4. Start there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. And just convert those over and do that. It's writing. I'm so tired. If you knew how much writing I've done these years, I am so tired of writing. Nobody's written as much as me, I swear, not even a lawyer.
We'll get it done.
Yeah, all right. Well, I'm going to send you that stuff, Randy, and I'll get in contact through Chris, get those 2 cases he had. That way I can send you that 40 U.S.C. 1983 that was won by that family. That'd be a good one to look at. They always like to look at the winners. Helps sometimes.
Mm-hmm. I agree. So, yeah, send that off, and everyone that mentioned we need to be in touch with this person or that person, make sure you send me emails so that I make all these connections. Okay, you guys, I'm not seeing the emails in there yet, so don't forget it, because tomorrow or this week everybody says, hey, did you get me this? Did you get me that? I need to see those emails, or I'm not going to remember it. So
that's fine. Okay. I'm not on the computer right now, but I'll get them off tonight. Get the stuff off.
Okay, sounds good. Ron in California, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm still with you.
Okay. What's going on in your case, bud?
Well, on the 29th of June, the judge dismissed my lawsuit against the 3 attorneys without prejudice because he said it was not in his jurisdiction to hear the case.
Okay.
That was in the federal court. So I'm going to be taking it to the Superior Court. But in the meantime, the attorney who was trying to evict me announced, finally he sat down, I guess, and he took a look at my paperwork that I have in the case, my request for judicial notice, where I'm showing that his fraud, and he's been, for the last 6 weeks, trying to find witnesses to corroborate his side of the story, and he's had difficulty in finding it because he'll never find it. He won't find it he can look until Jesus comes back. He'll never find it. Witnesses to corroborate his story, but he has requested another additional 4 weeks. So he's given that while we work on our lawsuit to put into Superior Court. And we're not going to submit that until after we see him in this unlawful detainer, which is a jury trial. He's trying to, right now it just seems to me they're trying to figure a way out of the situation that they're in, because I want them to go to jail.
Mm-hmm.
I want all of them to go to jail. I want them to lose their bar cards. I want them to go to jail. That's where we're at with that right now.
Excellent. Comments, questions to Ron on his case? Okay, and there's a couple of you that are muted. If you want to unmute, you just hit *6. Because I don't know if you muted yourself or I did it. Yeah, go ahead.
That may be me. Am I muted or not?
You're unmuted, Julio. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, just nothing. This has been such a long, winded conversation here, when it could have been, I could have explained a lot of this stuff in 30 minutes. But anyway, I would just like to, for everybody that is listening to this show, to give you a round of applause for all the beautiful things you do for everyone. And you don't even get paid for this. Like what I do. I don't even get paid for what I do. but you're providing an incredible service. So to you and your listeners, I'm really happy that there are people. I'm really happy that there are people like this in this world. So,
Julio, thank you for that. But what would you have done different where you would have shortened it up? What would your remedy be?
I'll have to sit down with you for maybe about an hour and explain to you all these crazy things that I know, and then you can just wrap the whole thing up in 1 hour and you're done. Okay? These are corrupt systems, okay? The medical system is corrupt. The law system is corrupt. Unless you realize that, you cannot fix it.
No, everybody on this call definitely realizes that it's all corrupt.
Yes, absolutely and completely. What we need to do is, and this, of course, is a lot of work, continue to teach people what you're doing, what I do, what everybody here is doing. Continue teaching people, because this is a huge country, okay? This is the problem that you guys have in the United States. I came from Costa Rica. Costa Rica is 4 million people, okay? Over here you have 300 million. So if we have a social problem in Costa Rica, that's a lot easier to fix. It's only 4 million people. You guys are 300 million people. That's big. It's really big. So taking care of something like that, it's not easy, okay? And all I want to say, as a closing comment is, I'm very proud of everybody that is here on this network with Randy. I consider her one of the most special women that I have ever met in my entire life. Which
we've met on online only.
Well,
just to clarify that you're actually out in California.
We met online. We haven't met in person. I would love to. That would be fun. But no, we became friends on Facebook, and we are very, very, very similar. But yes, this is a big, 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 big job. Okay, I don't know how the United States is going to get out of this. All right, this is a big, big job. You're talking about 300 million people. I even try to help the kids in my neighborhood, and even that's difficult. So, no, everybody has to really start teaching everybody else, and that's the only way you can do it.
And that is a long process. I know you said that the call was kind of long, but that's the thing. This is a long process. People are going through, like Rosanna, and Chris at the top of the hour, and even Andy Ostrowski, the attorney, they're all going through this long process. There is no real simple remedy. If there was, it would already have been taken.
I wish there was.
And that's why we do these calls. So, I know you think it's long, but people are walking through, and the whole purpose of the call is people like Rosanna. She listed off how many things that you have done, that you have put to the test, Rosanna, and that helps everyone else on this call to see, okay, did this work? Did this work? Did this work?
Right.
Clearly there's just pure corruption where you're at. And people are being held against their will, being drugged, and, it's gut-wrenching. It's heart-wrenching.
We can get out of this.
Yeah.
I know we can get out of this. It's just that we need every single day one more person. And we do this, you and I, on Facebook. Every single day, we have a new friend that all of a sudden learns things that they did not even know about. And all of a sudden now they're on board. So everyone should teach everyone else whatever they learn. And then we can get out of this mess.
So standing ovation to the speakers tonight, Rosanna and Chris and Andy and Gloria for your input, and James, otherwise known as Jim, And, there's more of you that have spoken, and that's the purpose of this call, is you guys are bringing, you're the gutsy ones that are coming to the table. You're putting things to the test in the courts. You're putting things to the test against the oaths and the bonds and the judges and these attorneys and even the corrupt cops. That's the whole point of this call. And, yeah, the calls take a little while, Julio, but the whole point is we got to see what steps worked and what steps didn't. And so I want to thank you for your words. And we're going to kind of move on to the next one because it's now 10 o'clock. We've been live for 2 hours, you guys. Does anybody have any other cases they want to bring to the table, any other brief comments?
All I'm going to say is good night for tonight.
Yes.
And anybody else, this is all yours.
Excellent. Thank you, Julio. Thank you for your input there. Thank you.
Yes.
Anyone else, anything brief that they want to bring up? You've got the floor.
Well, I can tell you, for those who are fighting against foreclosure, there have been some very large cases making lots of news the past week or so. One of the largest was the CFPB and 47 state attorney generals and the District of Columbia against J.P. Morgan Chase Bank, having to do with some of their credit card divisions where they had been robo-signing, manufacturing documents and false testifying and perjuring and so on and so forth. And there's a fairly substantial settlement coming out at a minimum of about $50 million to the homeowners, and of course 60 to the CFPB and some more to the states. I'm looking into that myself to see if I might be one of those. I think that I might be. There's another one on Bank of America, Wells Fargo. I mean, they're repetitively getting their fingers slapped with the back of the hand of a ruler, effectually, because these minuscule little $100,000 or $500,000 fines are really nothing because they've stolen trillions of dollars. So they're to give the public a feeling that they're doing something when they're effectively really doing little or nothing other than lining their own pockets, and in some cases the state's pockets, and then a little bit of trickle-down effect to the people's pockets in some cases for the egregious thefts by deception, stealing of homes, ruining of lives, driving some to suicide and medical problems. The whole thing is such a corrupt, abjectly corrupt criminal operation. We know it's predicated on fraud from the inception. It's never who you think you're doing business with. You've got some agent, actor, or actress. They're pretending to represent the bank when they're probably representing their own private interest in lieu, or some secret investor off in the sidelines they don't ever reveal to you, and try to dupe you into the fact that they think you're borrowing money, but they really created out of thin air called a table-funded loan, and they do it on your autograph on the contract that they then sell in the open markets to their investors, and they generate the illusion of money out of thin air called a debt hypothecation. Then they sell it for debt collection to project on payments on you're paying off the loan forever under the deed of trust to whoever purchased that instrument. So the wheels are kind of coming off the wagon because so many people are being abused that so many are waking up. It's not long before they implode this, but I will caution everyone to pay very close attention, because what you're hearing is a global collapse coming, and they're talking about all these different countries, 47 of them are bankrupt. Well, remember, they're doing the same things the states are doing, where they create these double books, CAFRA accounts, some have called them. And what they do is they loot the state's coffers, the federal coffers, the funds coffers, basically plundering the wealth out of the place before they implode the economy.
Exactly.
They claim that the global banking system is about to go bankrupt itself, which I will tell you is an out-and-out lie. It's a cover story. It's a fabricated ruse to confuse. because they have truly stolen in excess of, I know for a fact, 36 quadrillion, if not probably by now 50 or more quadrillion dollars, which is essentially the wealth of the earth, that is hidden away in secret depository thrift trading accounts, private banking facilities, and funds around the world in third world countries. And they've hidden away their loot that they've stolen from the people. And if they can dupe the people into taking the lump and re-victimizing themselves again by buying into their lies and their economistic math tricks, where they hypothecate and fabricate all these fairy tales and try to sell them to the public so they'll feel sorry for the poor bankers and bail them out on the taxpayers' backs again and put us into debt deeper so we can pay for our own destruction via debt and foreclosure, then we probably deserve what we get. But I hope that the people are waking up to the amount of abject fraud, criminality, and of course they claim they're too big to jail. No one is above the law. No one is above final accountability for the wrongs they do on this planet. And eventually there will be a payment due from these thieves masquerading as bankers and mercenaries masquerading as lawyers and public servants who are really just out there to plunder the wealth of the people by any means they can come up and schemes they can dream up, the Dream Act. And that's about all I can say about it. They've stolen property. Sure.
Chris, is Citibank involved in that? Any of this?
Yes, there was a Citibank this week. So I get emails every day. I read the Lexology, that large listing of cases. I don't read all the cases, but I've learned to peruse it and to scan it and to pick out particular cases. And what really speaks to me is when it sounds so innocuous and meaningless and understated, I know that's what I need to look at. Some of them have to do with bank cases. There's a lot of the CFB. They have a banking section. They have all sorts of intriguing law cases that are running through the mills that each one has its own factoid, and then you can determine or data mine or evidence mine and find really intellectual, stimulating factoids, statements, phraseologies, word terms, new concepts that are being forced into courts each day that you can then immediately incorporate into your law pleading, so you're really on the cutting edge, and you might even stump the judges with the stuff you know they don't know, and they'll be therefore intimidated, and they'll probably try to find some reason to find some little tiny thing to get your case out of their hair because they don't know how to deal with you, because you're too dangerous for them to deal with. They don't want you in their court, so they want to get you out by any means possible.
Yeah. Is there any way where did you say that you're getting this information? Because I'd like to read some of them, because we had a foreclosure case filed against my son, but he did sell his house. He didn't lose it. But if there's a case there, I mean, there's so much fraud in all the paperwork we've got, it'd be nice to be able to see what they're doing with going after. If this is Rosanna, I'm happy to speak with you when Andy shares me. If it's not, I'm at a loss because I'm not sure whose voice I have. It's Lola.
I thought maybe it was you, Lola. You know how to get hold of me.
Yeah, I know how to get a hold of you. Yeah, I just thought, I can. And you've got my email also, so if you need to send it to me, you can do that too.
Well, remember, there's no statute of limitations on fraud.
Right.
That's the important thing to know. Of course, finding any justice is a pretty tall order these days, but we'll give it our best shot and see what we can come up with. I'm happy to provide you information, and please give me a call sometime, and I need a little bit more detail as to which bank it is to give you the right information, although generally any bank that's in trouble, the other banks are doing the exact same things. They've got picked on, and the CFPB is actually kind of like a pirate agency. They're extorting money out of these bankers in little snippets. They're getting $100 million there, or $50 million here, or a couple $100 million here. But if they've stolen trillions, that's just the cost of doing business.
Well, I was wondering if they were maybe doing any class action lawsuits against them. That's what I was hoping for, that to go after them in a class action, be involved with that, because it would be a lot easier than doing all the truth.
I will tell you the truth, Lola. Anything that's got class action is only to enrich the law trade. The people who are the members of the class get a very, very small snippet of the settlement. It all goes to attorney's fees, the line of the attorneys, and the judge's pockets. And that is the truth about a class action. We all hear that and we think it sounds grandiose, and there might be one or two original members that brought the class to them that get some above a pittance for their efforts, but it's really to enrich the law trades specifically and completely, and there's law that says that. I can't put my hands on it right now, but I've read it in the last month, and it doesn't surprise me. The whole legal system is built to enrich them at our expense, whether it's the probate, B-A-I-T, where you're the bait, and they use the probate for fishing you to find out how much the estate's got, so they want to know if they want to loot it and take it into their supervision, their administration. It's the darndest thing when you know what's going on. It just really defies insanity to find how absurd this whole legal system is. It's nothing but a scheme to loot people and prey off of their lack of knowledge.
I'm just amazed that it's been this difficult. I guess I must have rose-colored glasses on, but I figured when the truth came out like it did, I had no idea that it would be like killing an octopus and pulling one leg off at a time while they grow another one back. I just did not believe that it would be this hard to take this, wrestle these people to the mat.
We've all been intentionally deceived, victimized, propagandized, indoctrinated, and taught false lies instead of truth, and told it was stuff we needed to know when they didn't teach us anything we needed to know in order to survive in this criminal-based world. Our school system has fatally failed us and left us disabled effectually, and except for a few of us that may have pulled by our bootstraps or the help from above of ourselves out of the depths of lack of education and ignorance and being Gruberized, as the elites like to call themselves these days. He told us how stupid Americans were, and I'm not convinced he's not right in a lot of cases, but at least some of us are trying to lift ourselves up and increase our intelligence quotients by coming on calls like this with great guests like Randy brings us and some of the people that we have on this call.
Yeah. Awesome. That is a great place to end it, you guys. Chris, Rosanna, thank you for those last words. We're going to see you guys next week, next Thursday. And I believe Dave lined up a couple really good people for us. So I don't know if Dave's still on. I know he had another event to be on. But we will see you guys 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time next week. Bring other people. Let's try and get some more remedy and talk it through.
I'm here, Randy. I'm here, Randy. Good night.
Thank you.
Right, good night, everybody.